the landscape surrounding name, image, and likeness, NIL, is about to change drastically yet again. And ACC country is right at the center of it.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch each and every day. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He is Kenton Gibbs, and his future is so bright he's wearing shades. I know you're struggling with an eye infection or something. So
yeah.
I appreciate you powering through. This is a guy who knows what it means to play hurt. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So, Kenton, just yesterday, we were talking about the NCAA, the Division I Council, officially changing their rules to match up with the rules they could no longer enforce. Maybe this time around they can enforce them, where they have now made it legal for member institutions, schools, to facilitate NIL deals with third parties, it was already happening, but it was technically not allowed by the NCAA. I think they're about to get forced to change their rules yet again. And this is a significant step towards players becoming employees of universities, whether people want to accept that or not. So Virginia, they're changing the game right now. And I'm going from a report here based on the new law. Dan Murphy of ESPN wrote it up early this morning. It's been kind of quiet, the reception that this has had. I think this is a bigger deal than people are making it out to be. That schools in Virginia will now be able to directly pay athletes via name, image, and likeness deals. This is no longer third parties. Schools in Virginia can pay athletes directly thanks to a state law signed Thursday morning, marking another significant step in the professionalization of college sports. The new law, which is scheduled to take effect July 1st, is the first in any state to make it illegal for the NCAA to punish a school for compensating athletes for their NIL rights. Current NCAA rules prohibit schools from signing NIL deals with their own players. Now, the law could either give Virginia schools a significant recruiting advantage or provide a catalyst for similar changes elsewhere. Here's an important key from this, Kenton, how they're trying to make these distinctions, because I know when people hear this, schools can now sign players to NIL deals. Players are now school employees. Technically not, or at least not yet, because the law explicitly states that athletes should not be considered employees of their school. Schools in Virginia are still not allowed to pay athletes for their performance in a sport, but starting this summer, they will be able to use university or athletic department funds to pay athletes for appearing in marketing campaigns. Williams, who is the athletic director at Virginia, said, quote, "Maybe a distinction without a difference, but there is a distinction there." Yeah. So it's like, we're not saying this is pay for play, but we're not saying it isn't pay for play.
And that's the biggest thing to me, right? And you know, me and the NCAA are going through a similar thing right now. I have a sensitivity to seeing light. The NCAA is having a sensitivity to seeing the future. They cannot have any ability to have foresight at all because they should have known this was coming. If anything, all the rules that they came up with for the latest proposal for, you can have your third parties and all this and all that, they should have known. They should have known that this was coming. The same way that they should have known that the transfers with the situation about basically having unlimited transfers now was coming, they should have known that we are marching onward towards the professionalization of college football. And I want to make one thing clear. You're absolutely right, Donno. This is a massive deal. This is a massive deal towards players being labeled professionals, which they objectively are. But I want to make one thing clear, because people are going to look at the 90th domino that fell and say, oh man, what happened to the game I love? This didn't start with these players. This didn't start with Virginia. As the old song goes, we didn't start the fire. This came a long time ago when coaches became the highest paid state employees in almost every state. This came with administrators from the NCAA. It was no longer one file cabinet worth of stuff. All of a sudden, they've got 20 different offices all over the place, and they've got these exorbitant salaries flowing around there. This came when coaches are becoming celebrities and having these commercials and all that. So don't be that person that is here to demonize these players, that's here to say, oh, this generation is all about me, and everybody's asking, what can I get? Because I remember Nick Saban said that about players and said that that's why he was quitting. Well, I simply say this, not just to Nick Saban, but to every coach that shares a similar sentiment, and to every fan that shares a similar sentiment. How would you feel if your job was negotiating with you only via college credits? How would you feel? You show up to work tomorrow and your job says, hey, we're no longer going to pay you, despite the fact that you generate millions, if not billions of dollars in revenue. What we will instead do is pay you in grad course credits. Congratulations, you get a free doctorate. You would look at them as if they are smoking on substances that we cannot mention on air without losing our clean rating. So please understand that this is a massive deal. Like you said, a distinction without difference. And this is moving us towards that singularity because no other sport can reach this level of pay for each individual player. Basketball can come close, but let's just be honest. Baseball doesn't even have full scholarships for all these kids. Some guys are out there hitting 15 dingers a year and on a half scholarship. So that's just what you're looking at in terms of football being the king by a mile in terms of revenue. And as we can clearly tell from this ruling out of Virginia, we're moving towards football separating.
Yeah, and I like what you said about moving towards, because I think we're closer to the beginning than the end here. Like this is not the end of the story where the goalposts keep having to get moved. So what I think are the two next steps that are going to come from this, one of these being a shorter term step and one of these being the eventuality, and it could be the end game. The short term step for me is the same way the NCAA has had to amend their transfer rules to allow players basically unlimited transfers as long as they're academically eligible. That's now a thing. The same way the NCAA recently had to say, we now can allow schools to negotiate NIL deals with third parties for players based on this Virginia rule, because all of a sudden, technically, Virginia has a different playing field from every other state. Like, how do you think, until they can get their own laws passed, and that's probably going to happen in due time, but how do you think, schools in SEC country are going to feel about this? There's going to be pressure not only on their own state lawmakers, but pressure on the NCAA. And the NCAA, whether they wait for state lawmakers or not, can no longer enforce rules on other states than Virginia and expect to get away with that. So the next step here is the NCAA is going to have to, yet again, Division I Council, amend their rules to say, yeah, you know what? Now we cannot criminalize or punish schools any longer for making direct NIL payments to players. I think that's the first next step. And then eventually, I think we're going to reach a step, Kenton. We already see things going on in the Ivy League with unionization. At some point, this is going to hit Division I, where eventually, whether it's under the NCAA umbrella or not, probably not, players are going to be employees of their universities, and we're no longer going to pretend it's not pay for play. Pay for play is going to be out in the open.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, it makes sense. There is too much money in this thing for it to not have led here. You cannot say that, hey, these athletes are not professionals when thousands of people are showing up to watch. What you and your friends do at Lifetime Fitness, that's amateurism. That's amateurism, right? Nobody wants to see you all play to 21. That's why you took the score down to 12, because it would last all day long with you all trying to get to 21. Nobody wants to see that. But you know what people do want to see? They want to see Tofili. They want to see DJU. They want to see Grayson McCall. They want to see Cam Ward. They want to see Tony Calandria. They want to see Castellanos. They want to see these guys. It's a difference. It's the difference, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, whether you feel bad about, oh, there's a student loan crisis and these players are already getting paid and all that. Listen, the world, like I always say, fair is not what exists in the world. Fair is a place where you go to eat food that'll kill you or get on rides that'll kill you quicker. That is just the reality. These young men are earning and creating a type of revenue stream that the world has rarely ever seen before. And it's time. Those chickens are coming home to roost, and these players are demanding their cut of it. You talked about the situation in terms of the Ivy League unionizing. You remember what happened when Northwestern tried it? They got shut down in the courts. Well, the courts seem to be a lot more pro-player as of late than pro-NCAA, huh? I guarantee you, like you said, this is going to be a situation where the NCAA has to go back and say, oh, yeah, we were good cop all along. We want you all to get paid. We want you all to, hey, schools, if you want to pay. And I'm going to say one more thing because I know I could talk ad nauseum like a preacher about this thing if you wanted me to. But in terms of, do you think the teams in SEC country and all these other schools in Big Ten country and ACC country are going to feel like they need to make a law about this? If 2024 has taught me anything, I watched the TikTok ban happen in real time. And that ban happened lightning quick. It went from like, hey, we're going to propose this to all of a sudden pass the House and the House of Representatives and Congress and Senate immediately. Let me tell you something. When it comes to dear old state, when it comes to dear old whatever university, UNC, UVA, Virginia Tech, Pitt, wherever your university is, nobody, and I mean nobody, we got former college coaches in the Senate. I am telling you right now, they will be moving quick, fast, and in the biggest hurry you've ever seen to, my state's got to pass this law. We got to pass this law. We got to get our players paid. Because if that discrepancy were to happen, and schools weren't to adjust, I guarantee you Tony Bennett would look like he'd be in everybody's top 10 coaches within 2 years. What you want to bet? I'll bet dollars to donuts on it.
I'm not going against you on that action, that's for sure. And speaking of action, we have spring football happening around the ACC this coming weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about Louisville. They take the field tonight. Florida State, they take the field on Saturday, 4 p.m. We're going to have our good friend Smitty, a.k.a. Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles, is going to break down all the important FSU storylines. We'll keep it to the on-the-field stuff. We'll talk about all the court stuff on future episodes, but who needs to step up in Florida State spring game? You want to keep it locked right here. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack, right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. And I already know you're keeping it locked to Monopoly Go. Oh, I'm so happy to have them part of the family here. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. Halftime, the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure if you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. The defending conference champs, Florida State, have their spring game tomorrow, 4 p.m. We got Brian Smith with us from Locked On Seminoles joining us here on Locked On ACC. So, Brian, what are the most important position groups you would like to see step up for the Seminoles on Saturday?
Well, number one, everybody wants to see DJ Uiagalelei be consistent, be accurate, not have mental errors and stuff. And I'm sure that the fans want to see some of the backups too. But DJ's the key. You know, Brock Glenn will play, Luke Krumhawk will play. That's great. But DJ's the key. That's the guy they went out and got in the portal. The other groups are a little bit interesting. They lost two big-time receivers in Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. I have no idea which guy or guys it's going to be. And, we're just going to play a committee. Look, you need a dude on third down that everybody knows they have to scheme against. And right now, Florida State doesn't have it after having two of them. That's a really concerning situation. Offensive line and running back is loaded with talent. They should be good. Defensive line's pretty good, but they did lose Jared Verse. There is no, and like Kenton and I have talked about, there's no replacing Jared Verse completely. Yeah. They do have guys. They got Marvin Jones Jr. that transferred in from Georgia. He's pushing the pile. I've heard he's really good. They've got guys. I need to see somebody step forward. Again, I'm not saying there's Jared Verse is walking out onto the field at Doak Campbell, but they need to have some proof that they got a really good pass rush. And then the linebacker unit's my biggest concern. They didn't have much depth last year, and they got really, really lucky. They just didn't have that significant injury. They're still not that deep. They got DJ Lundy back, and they've got a few other guys kind of fitting in. Want to see how they work. The secondary will be lights out. It's going to be tremendous. Ventral Cypress and a bunch of guys. There are about 8 guys in that secondary. I don't care who starts. They're good, and they've got tremendous defensive coaching, so I'm good there. But again, just to reiterate, everybody's going to watch DJ. 90% of the comments on my show are going to center around whether he played well or not. Is that fair? No. But when you sign up to play quarterback, that's the deal, baby.
So let me ask you this, right? Because we all look at the quarterback, but we all know the quarterback is the most dependent position in all of football because you need everybody to do their job right. So who are the playmakers the DJ's either going to be handing off to or passing it to that you're expecting to have a big year and even just a big game in this spring game to show like, hey, this is going to be a guy that the ACC is going to have to be on the lookout for?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it, but I think it's the transfer portal guys, which is ironic because we're in the middle of the portal. Malik Benson and Rodell Williams, both from Alabama. Ironically, Benson's the receiver and Rodell plays running back. Benson's the guy that can fly. DJ's got a hose. He can go long. This is a good match. But they also got some other guys like Darion Williamson, Kenton Portier, Hakeem Williams, a South Florida kid that I know that Alex is familiar with. They have guys, but which ones are going to fit with him? I'm curious if he has a favorite guy, and then Ja'Kai Douglas is a slot. They'll probably get involved, etc. One of those guys has to take like a big step forward because I haven't heard anything from every source I've talked to, everything I've read. So that's my concern. At running back, though, Lawrence Tofili will be the main guy, and Rodell will be more of the power back. They're good there. They got 3-4 other guys that can play. They're just loaded. I still think the passing game is the key. Offensive line's got plenty of experience. They should be pretty good.
You know, you mentioned, Brian, Florida State having a loaded secondary. And when you've got a loaded position group, you're not too surprised to see somebody hit the transfer portal. They're losing Greedy Vance Jr.
Yes.
Where would he have been on that depth chart had he stayed? And how much, if at all, will he be missed there?
Well, it's interesting because, he was really good last year. He was one of their best tacklers. He was one of their best guys just overall in coverage. And he played nickel, which we all know is a very dynamic position. Run defense, playing against screens, coverage, the whole 9 yards. But Earl Little Jr., another guy that transferred in from Alabama, came in and beat him out. He was a 5-star kid. Surtain coached him at one point back at American Heritage. This is just a really talented guy. And after you've been a starter and you're going in your last year and you're trying to get taped to go to the league, it's the portal. So you're not going to replace him. They've got Kevin Knowles behind him, but they are thinner. And Greedy could have played any of the corner spots or at nickel. He's a really good football player. He'd started probably 90% of the schools. But, Earl Little's just better. He flat beat him out. So it is what it is, and that's why the transfer portal is a little frustrating. But, again, it's their deepest position. It's not really in question. Ezra Thomas is another guy. I expect him to turn pro after this next year at the other corner spot. They got plenty of talent in the secondary.
So going back to the defensive line a little bit, because you talked about Jared Verse, but another guy they're having to replace is an all-conference, all-American guy in Braden Fisk on the interior. What is sort of absolutely, and you talk about Peyton and you talk about Marvin Wilson Jr. on the edge. What are we looking at in terms of replacements on the interior of that defense to where you feel like, you know me, baseball and football got one thing in common. You need to be strong up the middle. That is just a fact of life. What is the replacement plan there that you expect to see come out Saturday?
Well, somebody that Alex is familiar with, Darrell Jackson Jr., he got hosed last year, had to sit out. He's 300 pounds or so, 6'6". He's a kid from right down the road just outside of Tallahassee. He's the most physically gifted. He played at Maryland and Miami. Now he's at Florida State. That kid, you can't teach the girth and the length. He's probably their most gifted guy on the defensive line in general. If everything came together, maybe even more than Marvin. Joshua Farmer, another kid that's local. He's had his moments. Needs to take that next step up because he's probably going to start. And those are the two main guys. They're counting on some other players coming up. They got Grady Kelly. He's a guy from Colorado State that's a solid pickup out of the portal. And then Daniel Lyons, another South Florida kid. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. It's kind of his time. We'll see if anybody else emerges. But those four, that's a pretty good group. It'll be one of the top 2 or 3 interior D-lines in the ACC.
Now, Florida State head coach Mike Norvell, he's been known as the portal king. He's rocked the transfer portal since he's been with the Seminoles. But He's had to sit on the sidelines here for the first week. So going back to the Amarius Mims violation, Florida State was given, I would call a slap on the wrist. This is not a huge penalty, but they're, technically barred from contacting and taking transfer portal visitors until April 21st. So they're technically sidelined for the first week. Do you expect that to have an effect on the transfer portal? And to a side note on that, how many players do you think Florida State needs to bring in the portal this time around?
Well, that second part's really important. There's been a lot of debate on my side about that. I'll hit that momentarily, but I really don't think that with the NCAA openly admitting they're not really trying to punish anybody, I don't think anybody is not cheating in some way, shape, or form with the portal at this point. Yeah. I'll give you a 10-second story on this. I got a buddy that contacted me. He said, one of the guys I know plays D tackle at a prominent program, not even a prominent player though, but he's a D tackle. He's 300 pounds, was offered $500,000 to switch schools. He is not a frontline player. He wasn't going to transfer. He was offered $500,000 for 1 year. He's got 1 year eligibility left. So does anybody really think anybody's being clean here? Let's just cut to the chase. The answer is no. So I don't think it impacts them at all. And especially after the season they had last year, Florida State's not back to the Bowden era, but it's cool again to go to Florida State. So it's not going to hurt them that much, if at all. And they'll end up with 2 or 3 guys. And to your second part, I said this on my show the other day, Locked On Seminoles. You take it for whatever it's worth. You never, Kenton will bring this up. You never turn down offensive tackles if you can get a really good one. There are few.
Absolutely.
There are very few. They still need a number 1 receiver. It sounds like Malik Benson's going to be the guy. Ask me after the game at 4:00 on Saturday, but I need to see it. And then, on defense, like if you can just get a dude, I don't care which spot, it would be great, but they got to get at least one more guy out of the portal line, just numbers. I don't want to pit it on anybody, but there's a lot of pressure for them to kind of get going. Like another guy from Alabama, Sean Murphy, another elite kid. He didn't play at all at Alabama for a couple of years, but there's rumors that he might be a guy that has a chance to start. What if he doesn't work out? What if there's an injury? They're very thin there, so they need to get at least one guy at the linebacker spot.
So tell me this, is there a group that you're looking at coming into this spring game that you're like, hey, they're going to surprise America one way or the other, right? Like either people are too high on this group and you're like, let's hold our horses, or a group that you're looking at like, hey, they've got some dudes in this room and many people nationally are asking questions that will be answered in short order.
Running back and its upside. They got a kid that's unique, and this is one of those wrist things that's worked out. Jalen Lucas is a transfer from Indiana. He can fly. He's from Louisiana originally, and that's the connection with Norvell. His staff's always recruited there. Scat back, slot, you put him in motion, do different things with him, and he's going to be like their third guy. He could start at some schools. They're going to have Rodell. They're going to have Tofili, 2 guys that can carry the load, and him. And then they got Cam Davis, one of the best players in the country, coming in. And, oh, by the way, Keziah Holmes is their 5th running back. It depends on what direction you want to go with this. All those players, despite losing Trey Benson to the NFL draft, Florida State's running back room is loaded.
That's a lot to watch for in Florida State's spring game. Huge thank you to Brian Smith, host of Locked On Seminoles. Follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Brian, thank you so much. Enjoy the spring game.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Now, when we come back, Louisville has got a spring game tonight. Going to be, of course, some new faces. Some guys you maybe expected to see on Friday night, like Penny Boone, will not be in action. So who's got to step up for the Cardinals? Alex Donno and Kenton Gibbs with you on Locked On ACC. You want to keep it locked right here. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We are also proudly brought to you by Game Time. You know, I'm always on the Game Time app. I'm looking for those great last-minute deals on tickets. And guys, I'm finding them repeatedly. This is the only ticket app that I use. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Guys, I'm getting these crazy deals on Marlins games, Miami Heat games, Florida Panthers are in the playoffs, Inter Miami. Folks, I love the all-in pricing. This feature at Game Time brings you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So they're not going to slap the bait and switch on you. Lowest price guarantee on Game Time means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So folks, find the difference and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time. Terms apply. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So another spring game happening this weekend, tonight, in fact, the Louisville Cardinals. Now, Kenton, Louisville has been the subject of more so outgoing transfers than incoming transfers. And I think the guy who is, losing their potential starting right tackle is big, Unije, and also losing Penny Boone, who's probably going to end up in the SEC. Ole Miss and Tennessee get talked about a lot there. So I think one of the first big things I'm going to be looking for, Kenton, tonight in Louisville's spring game is who picks up the slack without Boone in the backfield. And I have been hearing really good feedback, and I'm happy for the young man, on former Miami running back Don Chaney Jr., who transferred out of Miami during the winter window. He's had terrible luck with injuries, but when healthy, he's a complete back, Kenton. Like he's got some speed, getting some of that back off of knee injuries. He's also got some power inside, and the kid is a film junkie. So I think that's going to be someone to watch tonight.
If I do recall correctly, Chaney was the one carrying the ball against Georgia Tech when that fumble happened, or am I wrong there?
You are correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad that he's found himself a new home. I'm glad he's found himself a new home because some of the vitriol that came his way on the back end of that, even though we all saw that he was down and it was a blown call by
and not to mention he shouldn't have even been in that situation.
And that was the biggest part that where I was just going. And I'm not saying that Cristobal did not catch the appropriate amount of heat for that. I'm just saying there should have been no heat thrown to him because he should have been in that position, period. But I will also say this, that this is the reality that Louisville is facing right now. You have to go out there and put on the show. You have to go out there and show strength, show solidarity, show that there is, this isn't a situation where there's cracks in the dam and you're just trying to put Flex Seal over it because, we're going to have Dalton Pence on the show here coming up pretty soon. But the reality is all of the reports coming out around Louisville, although a lot of them are fictitious, let's make no bones about that, there is still the idea that where there is smoke, there is fire. That's just a factual statement. It's a tale as old as time. It's not just about, what is actually happening. The perception can be affected by a guy like Penny Boone transferring out, by a guy like a tackle who's supposed to be a starter transferring out. Things like that affect the perception, whether you want to accept it or not. So Louisville here in this game, they have an opportunity to, again, go out, project strength, project stability, project, hey, we're good, we're fine. Everything is not perfect, but we're good enough. We are not worried about, our coffers aren't empty. We're not sitting up here having to beg for change to pay the players that we've already agreed to pay. We're in a good position. And again, for all the fans who feel like we hate Louisville, Ashton Gelati is one of my favorite players in the entire country. I love me some Ashton Gelati. I love watching him rush the passer, love watching this tape. Anytime I turn on the All-22, I got to find 9. I got to find 9 because he is just such an enjoyable young man to watch. I've met him in person at ACC Media Days. He's an extremely impressive young man. And so I don't want anybody thinking that Donno and I have an agenda, an anti-UL agenda, okay? We would love for the Cards to whoop the wheels off the Kentucky Wildcats. This is Locked On ACC, baby. We here with you. We here with you. But we just have to report the facts. If it was NC State, trust me, we'd be talking the same way. If it was Miami, oh, you best believe we'd be calling Uncle Luke right now. Hey, what's going on? Mr. Campbell, what's happening? We hearing some things that are fairly unsavory. So
I could probably get him on the show, by the way.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why we're going to have Dalton on the show pretty soon. And we're going to, reach out to some of our other Louisville contacts to get some folks on the show. Because, again, this is a big story. This is a very big story. But Louisville needs to keep the story on the field. They need to show a good performance in tonight's game.
Yeah, and of course, we probably could have led off with the quarterback situation. I know our guy Brian Smith was right to do that with DJ at Florida State because, Kenton, I do believe that on paper now – their new quarterback, Tyler Shuck, out of Texas Tech, his season was ended last year with a broken leg. I don't think he's gotten through a full season with injury in a few years now, but a lot of experience, and he's great when he's on that field. And I on paper, I think it's absolutely an upgrade from Jack Plummer, who I thought held Louisville back last season. In fact, if you look at Jeff Brom's coaching history, Louisville averaged 236.6 passing yards per game. That's the lowest in Jeff Brom's tenure as a head coach. Shout out to the Louisville Report for providing me with that stat. So, I think that Brom feels like he's got a guy who can take his offense a little further in Tyler Shuck. The question is, can he stay on the field?
See, Donno, I'm upset that you mentioned this, and I avoided talking about Tyler Shuck on purpose because I tried to give Louisville some love. I do not believe in Tyler Shuck at all. I don't believe in him. And again, this is coming from a guy whose career was deeply shortened with injuries. You don't just up and change who you are in that regard overnight. It does not work like that. I would have loved to. Listen, okay, if I could have called Rumpelstiltskin and traded in my firstborn or something like that to have healthy tendons, I would have done so. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. You are who you are, and we can all hope for his health. And again, I hope for all these players to be healthy. I hope that everybody's rolling at their highest clip and capacity, and we get to see the top level of athleticism possibly allowed in the ACC. With that being said, I don't believe in Shuck. I'm not even going to lie to you. Even when he is on the field, I think he's all right. I don't think he's a needle mover. I think that he is slightly better than Jack Plummer, but I would put them in the same tier of quarterback. I'd just say he's slightly ahead in that tier because to me, those two are guys that to me, Plummer is on the lower end of win with and slightly above guys that you have to win in spite of. Shuck to me at his highest clip is solidly in the middle of you can win with him when he's playing his best football. So and if he's not playing his best football, which we have seen at previous stops, he's downright unplayable. So I don't believe in Shuck. But like you said, Brom is a little bit of a quarterback whisperer. Those Brown boys do have the reputation that they can, if you give them a sentient Roomba with a good right arm, it might could figure out how to throw for 3,500 with those Brown brothers.
You just dropped sentient Roomba on me?
Yeah, you get that Roomba a little bit of consciousness, not exactly like it can make art or anything, but you teach it how to make a one read, drop down to two. Your third is the check down. If it got a right arm, it might be all right. So I believe in Brom enough to say that they may be able to win with Shuck, but I think there's going to be a few games where they don't have that talent level over other teams to where you're going to have to win because of Tyler. And I don't think he's that guy. I don't think he can get it done.
We'll see what he shows us in the Louisville spring game, which is 7 o'clock on Friday night. Florida State spring game will be 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I hope those eyes feel better, man. I could see you were struggling. I hope you feel better. Get some Visine or something in there.
Listen, I'm trying, brother. I'm trying, man. I got the prescriptions and all that, so we're going to see what we can do.
I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We'll talk to everybody next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.